Hello, my sweet stitchers! So happy you're here! It's time to make the doll's dress. As you saw in the first videos of this course, where I introduced all the parts of this project, this is a removable dress. In future projects, we'll make other characters from the series, and you'll be able to mix and match their outfits. It's a wonderful idea that little ones are going to love. Don't you think? You'll see it's not difficult to make at all. Let's get started.
Grab your yarn and a cup of tea. There's magic in the making. Just wait and see. From a little stitch to a friendly face, we're finding joy in every space. Count your rows and check your yarn. A little sheep from a tiny farm. A magic ring and a steady hand. The cutest toys in all the land. Stitch by stitch, we're making friends. With pull gum makes the fun never end. Poke it up, pull it through. Make it amigurumi just for you. Soft and sweet, handmade with care. Pull gum makes is always there.
For the dress, I'm using a different shade of red than the one I used for the hair. We'll start by making the sleeves of the dress. Make 2 identical pieces. Begin by making a foundation chain of 15 stitches, leaving a fairly long yarn tail because we'll use it to make the edging around the cuff once the sleeve is finished. To estimate how much yarn to leave, lay the yarn across your hand and wrap it around 3 times. Then leave a little extra before making the foundation chain. If you're using a thicker yarn, be sure to leave a longer yarn tail. Join the foundation chain into a ring to continue working in continuous rounds, just as we did with the legs of the previous garment. Straighten the chain with the stitches facing you, then begin working into the first stitch of the chain in the round. Repeat the sequence of 4 single crochets and 1 increase 3 times, finishing with 18 stitches. For this round, we'll work into the top loops of the stitches, because when we make the edging around the cuff later, we'll use the bottom loops that we've left free. If you end up with 1 stitch too many or 1 too few, simply adjust with an increase or a decrease so you finish with 18 stitches. Continue working in continuous rounds over these 18 stitches as usual, but don't crochet too tightly following this pattern. Once you've finished, make an invisible finish, just as we've done up to this point. Of course, you can use whichever technique you prefer to leave the edge nice and even. Now we'll use the long yarn tail we left at the beginning to make the edging. We'll be working into the bottom loops of the foundation chain that we left unused. Insert the hook into the stitch next to where the long yarn tail comes out, and pull the yarn through as if making a slip stitch. From here, we'll repeat the same sequence all the way around this edge. 1 slip stitch, 2 half double crochets into the same stitch, and 1 slip stitch. What we just made counts as the first slip stitch. So now work 2 half double crochets into the same stitch. tighten your tension just as we did for the edging on the bloomers, then work 1 slip stitch. Repeat. 1 slip stitch, 2 half double crochets into the same stitch, and 1 slip stitch. Fasten off with a chain, then pull the loop through, leaving a yarn tail. Thread the yarn tail onto a yarn needle to finish the edge. Insert the needle from front to back through the next stitch to pull this finishing stitch into place. Take the yarn tail to the inside as far as you can. Then tie a knot and trim the excess yarn. Arrange the stitches of the edging to give it a nice shape. With both sleeves finished, we're ready to begin the body of the dress. Begin by making a foundation chain of 46 stitches, leaving a short yarn tail so you can weave it in later. Starting in the second chain from the hook, work back with 45 single crochets, using only the top loops of the foundation chain so we can use the bottom loops later. Continuing to work in rows, make 3 more rows of 45 single crochets. Now work only 11 single crochets. Next, attach one of the sleeves by working 21 single crochets around its 21 stitch opening, starting at any stitch. Then work 23 single crochets across the main piece, beginning with the loop technique so there won't be any gaps between the pieces. Yarn over and pull up a loop from the next stitch, even though it's already been worked. Pull up a loop from the worked stitch of the next piece, then pull up a loop from the next unworked stitch, and pull through all the loops together. This counts as the first of the 23 single crochets. Next, attach the second sleeve the same way as before, working 21 single crochets around its opening, starting at any stitch. To finish this row, work 11 single crochets across the remaining 11 stitches of the main piece, again beginning with the loop technique. Pull up a loop from the next worked stitch. Pull up a loop from the worked stitch of the next piece. Pull up a loop from the next unworked stitch. Then pull through all the loops together, tightening well. This counts as the first of the 11 single crochets, so continue with the remaining 10. We now have a new edge of 87 stitches. From this point on, continue working in rows, turning the work to begin each row. The pattern for the following rows is this. When it's time to make the decreases, you can simply skip a stitch to create them, making sure to keep your stitches nice and snug. When we finish, we'll work down the next side, making single crochets from one end to the other. Since we don't have stitches to work into, we'll make the single crochets into any available loops. The number of single crochets we make doesn't matter. Right here, where we are, we'll make another single crochet to create an increase. This is to prevent the tip from curling inward. Without removing the hook, we'll continue working along the bottom of the project into the 45 unworked bottom loops of the foundation chain. We'll make 45 single crochets into those 45 loops. If you have one loop too many or too few, make an increase or a decrease to adjust the piece and finish with 45 stitches. Continue working back and forth as we've been doing so far, but now on this other side. Before, we worked upward to build the top of the dress, and now we'll work downward to make the skirt. So, turning the work to begin each row and working over these 45 stitches, the rest of the pattern for the following rows is we'll take this opportunity to weave in the starting yarn tail. When we finish, we'll join the two ends, the stitch where I have the hook with the first stitch at the opposite end of the piece. From here, we'll continue working in the round, leaving an opening at the back and continuing down with the skirt. Now, working in continuous rounds, the rest of the pattern is when we finish, cut the yarn tail long enough to make the invisible finish and weave it inside the dress. If we leave a little bit of the yarn tail sticking out, we can secure it between the stitches of the edging we'll make around the back opening. We'll work single crochets around the back opening as we've done before to give the edge a nicer finish. Always leave enough of a yarn tail to weave it in. Start at one corner and work single crochets all the way around the opening. Weave in the starting yarn tail as you work. When you reach the bottom, make only one single crochet in the corner. Then continue along the other side, hiding the yarn tail that we had tucked inside the skirt after making the invisible finish. The last stitch will be a slip stitch, so there won't be any difference in height. I won't make a chain to fasten off here. I'll simply cut the yarn and pull the loop through to finish the stitch. Otherwise, it would add height and create a small bump that would be noticeable. Thread the yarn needle and weave the yarn tail into the sleeve, tying a knot at the end. Before closing the skirt, I recommend putting the dress on the doll so you can decide whether it's the length you want. Otherwise, you can add or remove rows of 108 single crochets to get the length you prefer. Although it's not necessary, if you'd like, you can add a button or some Velcro to close the back of the dress. But honestly, it closes on its own, and the apron the doll wears also helps keep the opening closed. Next, we'll make the apron the doll wears, but for that, we'll need to watch the next video. All right, my sweet stitchers, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!